Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Nix. I'm head of content and research. My guests today are Takshay and Parag from the EY team. We're going to be having a conversation about AI and supply chain, some of the real-world things that are happening, some of the expectations, and also what might still be science fiction. I'm so excited for this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's our pleasure.
Why don't we start off with the question I think most people have about AI and supply chain right now. There's the fact and what is really being done, and there's the elements that are still science fiction. What is really being done with AI right now? And I wonder if you could maybe give us a few real-world examples to illustrate what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, look, there's been a lot of AI craze up there. It's real, and that's what you need to make it real for supply chains. Traditionally, if you look at historical supply chains, there are multiple functions that bring the supply chain together. You look at planning, you look at logistics, you look at manufacturing, you look at warehousing, you look at sourcing. So if you look from AI perspective, there are three things: variety, velocity, and variability of the data that sits across all of these functions. So if you look from AI perspective in supply chain, there are two kinds of use cases or two kind of areas where we see. One is end-to-end supply chain. Whether you look at supply chain risk and resiliency, you look at supply chain orchestration, you look at decision points which sit in the middle of these functions. And there are use cases or areas where AI can really help at a functional level. Let's take example for demand forecasting. Like one of our CPG customers, we're using AI to help them integrate the point of sales data with their traditional sales history data to help them understand how consumers are buying actually at the shelf. So they are not just reacting to what their orders are, but they're reacting to what the consumer demand out there. If you look at logistics, one of the customers we are working with, the pharma company, they're trying to look at where the vaccines are. They're looking at real-time visibility of vaccines and then use AI models to adjust for variability in the delivery, look at what the temperatures are, because some of them are life-saving drugs. So that's where AI is able to bring some of those issues out. And at the same time, depending on how far you want to go, it can make decisions for you, which are more accurate than more humans, because at times we have our own biases as humans. So, some examples like this. As I said earlier, then there is the whole end-to-end supply chain. We all got hit by COVID, 100-year event. But what it brought to fore was that risks are real. There are 13,000 risks, roughly a supply chain, depending on how you are, how your supply chain is actually situated across the globe. You can be potentially hit by 13,000 different events which could cripple your supply chain. Something happens in Panama Canal, ships are stuck. I'm sure you all have seen that. But how do you get ahead of that? So if you look from AI perspective, it brings your planning, your manufacturing, your materials, all this data together to tell you there's an anticipated risk. How do you get ahead of it? Do you want to expedite? Do you want to look at some other sources? Or do you want to tell your customers, we're not going to be having this product? So those decisions, what took weeks and weeks to get there, now they get there in less than 10 minutes. That's the power. It's changing how we operate as a supply chain rather than the traditional ways of looking at functional use cases or functional areas where you can drive value. Right?
No, I think you covered it well. I think the other thing that I'll add is what AI is doing for supply chain organizations too is it's bringing a lot of this information that he's talking about and making it accessible for people, right? So in the cases where, there's certainly cases that you just described, Takshay, where, the AI is actually making decisions for you, right? We've seen that and executing, right, on what it sees. There are other circumstances where it's not, that is not as clear, right? And a human has to get involved. And that's where what we're seeing is AI is democratizing that information, getting it out to the people that need it at the point of use, and is making it much easier for them to access information, right? So an example of that would be one of our customers is starting to use AI to have people on the shop floor be able to access information about maybe they want to repair a specific machine, right? Or they want to understand how to how they need to execute a shift change or whatever that is, right? That with a mobile device they can ask a question to some AI and immediately render the exact right information without having to go search for it, right? So those are some very practical examples of where it's bringing all of that information that organizations have and actually bringing it to the point of use where people can actually use it.
I mean, I have a lot of conversations about digital transformation journeys and bringing new tools into the toolbox, and AI is no different. There are going to be some early adapters who find early success, and there's a lot of people who are going to have stumbling blocks and challenges. I wonder if we can talk about your experience when your clients are coming to you. What are some of the common challenges that they're finding as they try to bring this tool online?
Yeah, it's a great question because, look, everybody sees all the hype, right, about what AI is out there, what it can do, right? And then when they start asking questions about, well, what's it going to take for me to start to employ this and use it in my organization, the first hurdle that they run into certainly is data. Right, because when they start understanding, right, the amount of data that's required to really make AI effective, right, and whatever form of AI, be it Gen AI, machine learning, whatever it may be, it is really a data intensive exercise, right? So there's certainly a challenge around that, and we'll talk a little bit in a moment. I'll talk about how people are addressing these challenges. Two is, the impact on the organization, right? So now when you start employing AI, there's really two challenges related to that. One is, how do you get your workforce able to actually use the AI effectively? And then two is, in the cases where you have AI taking over certain activities, right, that your workforce is doing, how do you transition that workforce into doing different things, right? So I would say those three things are the number one challenges that we see in companies, tackling AI. So on the first one, like, what are they doing about the data? I think historically people have seen where in the past that data has been, when they've embarked on data projects, they've been very challenging, right? There's so much data in the organizations. To try to go forward and do a project to cleanse all the data in an organization is impossible. It's a boil the ocean, type of problem. So what we encourage people to do from an AI perspective is to say, look, focus on some of these specific use cases that Takshay was outlining earlier. Think about the data that's actually required, right, to service those use cases, and then create these products, these data products that you could use to ultimately, right, drive the outcomes that you're looking for from the AI, right? And that's a piece by piece build. It's not something you have to do all at once, right? You can do that in pieces and actually make it consumable and realize value out of your AI along the way, right? Without having to boil the ocean on data all at once. Mm-hmm. So that's the way we recommend, right, as clients attack the AI issue, is how they overcome the data challenge. The second one, right, around the workforce is, so I'll use EY as an example, that obviously in professional services, right, there's a huge ability to leverage AI, right, to do the work that we have to do, and we obviously have to do it in a very secure way with our clients' data, et cetera, right? So we have gone through a journey on ourselves, right, in terms of how do we get our workforce trained, right, the right tools in their hands to be able to use AI in our day-to-day jobs, right? So it's been a journey, right, to get the right tools in the right sort of box, so to speak, right, that's going to be secure, and getting the word out to each of our professionals, and going through kind of examples, use cases, right, ways for people to use it, opening it up for people to experiment and learn, right? So it's so that each person can kind of go on their journey of being able to use it, right? So I definitely encourage organizations, as they look to enable their workforce with AI, to give that sort of sandbox experimentation, kind of environment, safe environment for their people to learn, and really embrace the notion that the natural curiosity of the organization that you have to be able to learn and use AI in a different way. And then the third challenge I mentioned, right, was saying, okay, well, look, how do I refocus, right, my organization when certain tasks are being done, on an AI basis? And on that challenge, what I would say is, look, typically the tasks that AI is doing tend to be very, very, data intensive. They tend to be transaction intensive, right? All these things that is probably not the best use, right, of human energy. And in fact, in many cases, in some of the examples that Takshay talked about, we've actually seen that humans actually make the result worse, right, by going through and changing some of these results, right? So really what we're doing is we're focusing the human energy on the areas where the humans can make the most positive impact, right, for the organization. So we help people, identify sort of what are those areas, right? Depending on the use case, depending on, what we're talking about, of where is that energy actually positive and accretive to the outcome versus taking away from it, right? And we sort of channel, right? You channel the workforce toward that. And usually what that results in, we find, is much better job satisfaction, engagement, right? People see the impact of what they're doing. And it tends to be the kinds of things that excite people when they come to work. So it's actually a really exciting opportunity for people to be able to move into new areas that they may not have been able to do before.
Well, I think enthusiasm is definitely the spirit of the age when it comes to AI. But I know EY recently did a study that had sort of a surprising result. It was a study, and first of all, they spoke to C-suite executives. Where do you think you're going to be in terms of timelines for autonomous supply chains and using AI to its fullest? And then they asked sort of the mid-tier supply chain executive. And the C-suite is I don't want to say pessimistic. They certainly think it's coming, but they were more cautious in their predictions. And I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about why that might be.
There's a lot of expectation from the board in terms of what AI could do for them, in supply chain, customer operations, so many other areas. When it comes to the study we did and what you referenced here, what we found is a stark difference between what C-suites think about where the supply chains are in use of AI or autonomous supply chain or collaboration with the larger ecosystems versus what the functional managers or the people who are actually in supply chain. What we found, I think one of the most concerning things we found was, during COVID, it was the supply chain professionals, with or without tools, they made sure the goods were flowing. They made sure we had bread on the table. They made sure our systems were running. They made sure the healthcare was taken care of. So as that COVID, has faded into our memory, or it is fading into our memory right now, supply chains have got, the perception is changing to be a cost center. We've seen that one big perception of, is supply chain a cost center? Or they drive a differentiated customer experience, because COVID demanded we need to have a new go-to-market models, new way to address consumer needs, meet them where they are, or your customer needs. So that's something which we found very, C-suite versus what the supply chain people thought was a big difference. And the second, as you alluded earlier, that there's a big difference in perception of how autonomous we are, how digital we are, where we see the supply chains becoming autonomous or they're becoming more AI-centric. The functional leaders are a lot more gung-ho in terms of when they'll be able to achieve that versus C-suite. There's a lot of skepticism. And this skepticism is not unwarranted because, as you see the AI or blockchain or some other technologies, they explode on the scene, as we try to bring them into our systems, we're trying to change the habits of people. Like Parag was talking about earlier, it's about the human in the center. How do you amplify their capabilities to do that? So they've seen mixed results. Some of the things just did not pan out as they were expected to. There's a lot of investment that went into it. Now, 3 years hence, now we have AI, where we've been talking about AI. Now they are right in their way to ask us, will it really make a difference? Will it make a difference in my balance sheet? Will it make a difference in my P&L? Will I be more EBIT positive because I'm using some of the AI, one, to improve our customer experience, which means higher revenue, or am I going to drive productivity through the labor or manufacturing or logistics? How's this going to help me? And so I think we as a supply chain professional owe it to our leaders to help them understand this is what the transformation looks like and this is where we need to take. But as you said, there's a perception gap of one, I'll summarize in terms of what supply chains can deliver. Are they just the cost centers? Or they're going to be my strategic advantage to give differentiated customer experience, which means more revenue or new ways of reaching a customer. And secondly, are we transforming the way we work? To Parag's point, are we making life much more easier for our professionals who don't have to do that same work every day, which could be, done by AI? It's repetitive. It's got the same results. Can AI do to automate some of those things? And you focus on higher value stuff, where we focus on either on the customer, or you focus on the market, or you focus on some of the transformational things you could be doing in your factories, it could be doing in your warehouses, or in the planning for that matter.
Now, you mentioned looking back 3 years. I wonder if we could talk about looking forward 5 or even 10 years. And I'm certainly not, holding you to it, but at this stage where there is this enthusiasm, but also some real world examples, where do you think we're going with this tool?
So, look, I think AI is here to stay. I really do. I think we've only begun to scratch the potential of what it can do for organizations. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts. Look, in the near term, this is going to continue to expand. People are going to find more and more use cases where they think they can apply it. People's ability to provide the data that's required, right, to power AI is going to continue to get better. And all of us as professionals are going to get better at how we actually use AI in our everyday jobs. So I think that trend is going to continue. What I think is going to happen beyond that is I would really like to see companies start to think about reimagining what their supply chain operating models, their supply chain activities, right? How would they actually do that if they were to start with a white sheet of paper, in a sense, and think about, okay, now that I have all these AI tools, how would I actually operate differently, right? So moving from digitizing and AI, using AI for the things that you do today, to actually further out saying, how would I completely do those things differently, knowing what I know now about having those tools, right? Having those tools available. And I think that's the next unlock, right? Of course, no one's starting with a white sheet of paper, right? But with that said, I think that would be instructive for people to really reimagine how they could shift, right? How they organize themselves, what kind of talent they actually look for, and how they actually operate their supply chain to unlock even more kind of speed, agility, right, in what they do. So I think that's the future, right, of where this is going. And look, I know many people are skeptical, right, of they've seen other trends come and go, right, of where there was maybe a lot of hype and a lot of excitement that never really materialized. Quite frankly, I don't think AI is one of those. I really believe that it's been around for 35 years or more, right? That people have been using it. It's just coming to a point where now, right, we have the ability to use it in many, many different ways, right? So I think that's why it's really here to stay.
For people who want to remain current with EY's thinking in this space and the work that you're doing, what is the best way to maybe get in touch, ask a few questions, stay on top of what's happening?
So look, certainly our website is a great resource of information around this topic and really what other some of the case examples that we've been describing. I'd certainly encourage people to start there, and I think that's a very easy way to get hold of us as well.
Absolutely. Well, I encourage everyone to check that website, and I'd like to thank you both so much for your time today. It's an exciting topic, and it's also so wonderful to hear some of the real-world examples and also where we might go from here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. I've been Jeff Nix. Let's do it again soon.